The two anniversaries that I'd remember in .NET world were the user group anniversary, which is in May, and then January 12th, 2002 was, February 12th, 2002 is when the .NET Framework was released, and I would always remember that anniversary when the .NET Framework came out. But so first of all, I would like to give thanks to Brian and Matt for running the user group for the last 7 to 9 years. I know what the job is like, and so please help me in thanking them, because yep, it's some work. It takes time to plan all of this stuff, and I'm so happy that they have been able to keep it going this long. And so yeah, that's just great that Omaha has been able to support this group for that long, and it's just neat to have reached 17 years. Next year we graduate, and then we can get kicked out of the house. So, the next people I wanted to thank were just people who were there at the beginning that kind of helped start this. And so this was our first logo. This was the best that I could do in probably Paint, Microsoft Paint at the time. I slaved over this for about 10 or 20 minutes, right, and then got this together and then was able to put it in some slide decks. But originally it was the Midwest .NET User Group, and we abbreviated it MidNet. And that file was dated, you can see there, 5/14/2001. And a group of us from a consulting firm, Quilogy at the time, went to Microsoft, and we said, "Listen, we can be developing on it." And so there were 3 of us from Quilogy. There was Wayne Hoagie, he was a consultant at Quilogy, and then Dave Guinan, he was a consultant at Quilogy, and myself, and we went to Microsoft. And the Microsoft person at the time was Ed Young. All of us got together and we said, we need to create a user group, and Microsoft was on board, and so Microsoft was our first sponsor. And this is kind of what we had created in the room when we had that meeting that day. And so this document dates to 5/16/2001. And this is how it all got started. Our first meeting was then in May in 2001, and it was down at the Embassy Suites, and we had around 250 people. Microsoft paid for the hotel room, the meeting room. They paid for drinks and hors d'oeuvres at the back. They paid for all the stuff, and we had 2 presenters. Ed Young presented, and then I presented. And this is the presentation that I gave on that day. And so there would be the logo, and this was the inaugural meeting, and this is the stuff. And so I'm going to walk you through these 17 slides. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. This was back in the days of just learning how .NET worked. I mean, in 2001, we were still probably in beta 1, maybe just in beta 2. And we were learning all about this stuff that changed our world from VB6 to .NET. So it was a neat meeting, and it was fun to see it all to come together, and it's been great to see it all come through the years. And so as I was walking out this morning, I told my wife I wouldn't be home after work. I'm coming to present at the meeting, and I won't be home, and I'm going to share some stuff with the user group just to kind of walk down memory lane. And she said, "Well, do you have any pictures?" And I said, "No, like this was before cell phones. So we had cameras on them. This was before smartphones." I had gotten married the month after this. I got married June 2001. And we remember getting a wedding gift, which was a 3-megapixel camera. But it took grainy pictures, so we sent it back and got a film camera, because film cameras still did much better than digital cameras in that time. This was pre-9/11. This was a long time ago. Yeah, that's kind of it. As the user group grew, we met in a couple more hotel rooms that Microsoft paid for. And then eventually Microsoft got good at hosting user groups, because user groups were just starting to fill out, and a lot of them were starting to come online. And then a company and Microsoft kind of started the INETA, International Association of .NET User Groups, to kind of start coordinating how Microsoft worked with user groups. And then by that time, we were meeting at various building locations. I can remember us meeting at Quilogy a couple times. I can remember us meeting at the Precision Industries Ballroom one time. It just depended on what sponsors would be willing to host and pay for. Some sponsors paid for better rooms, like Precision Industries, but sometimes we met at the Millard Library on 144th Street. And I can remember doing a couple meetings there. So those were early days. But then as we got to like 2004, 2005, we started meeting at the Creighton location that was in Old Mill. That Creighton's not an Old Mill anymore. And we met there for several years. And that was just always a great place. Everybody knew where we were. It was a nice facility. And Creighton did a great job sponsoring us then. And then about that time, I was no longer the president. I forget who transitioned to after me. I wonder if it went to a couple of consultants at Quilligy for a while, and they ran it for a couple of years. I took it back for a couple of years, and then it went to Matt and to Brian. And so that's kind of the history. What questions could I ask or answer?
Did HTC spin off of .NET?
That's a good question. Yeah, so HTC's first HTC was in 2004, and Joe Olson was running the user group at that time. And he realized, like, there's these user groups, they have good collaboration. He'd met up with quite a bit of them at an MSDN event and put HTC together out of that. Because HTC's tagline at the time was the nation's largest independently run user group conference. And so it was all because of user group leaders putting that together. So HTC, in a way, did through Joe's leadership. Yep. Yep, what else? Cool. Oh, I did have one more thing. Sorry. And this was the first website that we had. Yeah, this was an oldie but a goodie. Let me zoom in, please. At the time, as I'm just kind of going through memory lane here, Brinkster was one of the original hosting companies that would be loaded into Visual Studio 2002. And in Visual Studio, you could upload your website to Brinkster. And if you told Brinkster that you were a user group, you got free hosting, which was kind of cool. And yeah, I remember to take a screenshot of this right before we...
This version was written in .NET too.
This probably was, yeah. But very simple HTML stuff.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And why did it change to Omaha?
Oh, yes. So in 2005, I wanted to make the .NET user group like expand. And so at the HDC event in 2005, we started the SQL user group. We restarted the SQL user group. It had been going, but had kind of fallen away a little bit. So we restarted the SQL user group. We started the SharePoint user group. And then I think we started the BizTalk user group, which eventually became renamed to like a messaging user group or something like that. And so we kicked off 3 new user groups at HDC 2005. And I wanted all of those groups to be using the same site and have the same email list. And that way people just had one place to go to find all the events. So then we renamed the website from funwith.net. It was originally midnet.org to funwith.net. And then from funwith.net, we went to Omaha MTG for Microsoft Technology Group. And that way we could bring everybody into the one umbrella and have one website to have all these user group lists for the area. So good question. Yeah.
How many angry letters did you get over the years from Omaha Magic the Gathering? You stole their
I got 0. I didn't even know that was a thing.
I just heard people ask me about that.
Really?
What MTG stands for.
Yeah, Microsoft Technology Group, and it was a way for us to get about 4 to 6 different user groups under one umbrella. But yeah, Magic the Gathering, I wouldn't have guessed. What else? Great. Well, thank you for inviting me. This has been fun. I'm so glad. I would have passed by, and I would not have remembered, and that would have been sad. So
I think,
I'm glad that you.
You know, we obviously have a great group going here, and we owe a lot to
Yeah.
the early leadership of that. And I think Philip deserves a round of applause for starting